On a spring morning in 2015, a taxi driven by Mr. Chu was cruising smoothly along the Eastern Ring Road of Taipei City. The morning rush hour had just ended, making the elevated road unusually clear. To Mr. Chu, this was just another routine ride, but neither he nor the passenger in the back seat could have imagined that just a minute later, they would collide with a falling airplane. February 4th, 2015 at 10:12 a.m., Captain Liao Chien-tsung was piloting the aircraft. ATR-72 had just completed its second flight of the day. Half an hour later, the plane was scheduled to carry 53 passengers for its third journey, that day from Taipei Songshan Airport to Kinmen. Among the 53 passengers were 2 tour groups with a total of 31 people. They planned to visit Kinmen during the day and return to Xiamen in the afternoon. Flight number GE235 was piloted by Captain Liao Chien-tsung, who was 42 years old at the time. In the right seat sat Captain Liu Tzu-chung, 45 years old, serving as flight supervisor. In the absence of a first officer, 2 captains could coordinate the operation together. There was also First Officer Hung Ping-chung, 63 years old, seated in the cockpit. He was a veteran pilot with over 16,000 flight hours, participating in a type transition program from ATR-72 to 500 to ATR-72 to 600. Before we continue with the crash sequence, let's review the career of Captain Liao Chien-tsung, an important factor leading to the events that followed. In 2008, at the age of 35, Liao Chien-tsung took the exam and applied to China Airlines. After passing the interview round, he began the program to transition to flying the Airbus A330. However, the training did not go smoothly. Due to limitations in skill and knowledge, he was required to take additional training to continue. During a simulator session, the instructor evaluated that he showed instability under high pressure, poor multitasking in stressful situations, and lacked stress resilience. Therefore, on March 30th, 2010, the airline terminated his training program. Nonetheless, Liao Chien-tsung didn't give up. A few months later, he applied to TransAsia Airways and was accepted into the type rating training program for the ATR-72 to 500. After half a year, he passed the assessment and began his flying career there as a first officer. However, when joining the training program to upgrade to captain, he faced difficulties. He failed important subjects in the simulator test. Nonetheless, TransAsia still gave him another chance. After reviewing and additional training, he passed the exam. On July 1st, 2014, Liao Chien-tsung officially became a captain at the airline. Although the path was not smooth, he ultimately achieved his goal of sitting in the captain's seat. Though he was officially appointed captain, that didn't mean the road ahead would be trouble-free. During actual flights and route training, Captain Liao Chien-tsung was frequently rated unsatisfactory by instructors. He made repeated mistakes in various evaluations. However, he continued to be retained as a captain at TransAsia. In 2014, the airline began operating the upgraded aircraft, ATR-72 to 600. To continue flying this model, Liao Chien-tsung was required to undergo a type conversion training. During the simulator sessions, he was advised to practice a particularly critical skill, handling engine failure, right after takeoff. This would later become the key scenario in the accident. By November 11th of the same year, Liao officially flew the ATR-72 to 600 as captain. Compared to other trainees at the time, his emergency response capabilities were clearly still lacking. However, the airline failed to properly supervise and guide him throughout the entire training process. These oversights, when an incident occurs, can be amplified many times over, and the consequences could be devastating. By 10:45 that morning, Flight GE235 completed its pushback and engine start procedure. The auxiliary power unit contacted ground control to request taxi clearance to the runway Songshan ground. GE235 requesting taxi clearance. GE235, taxi via taxiway W to runway 10. Roger, taxi via W to runway 10. GE235, clear via W to 10. Right side is clear. After receiving clearance, the aircraft began taxiing along taxiway W to proceed to the threshold of runway 10. At this time, First Officer Hung Ping-chung, who was in transition training, together with Captain Liao Chien-tsung in the right seat, began discussing the differences between the ATR-72-500 and the ATR-72-600 they were currently operating. The instructor just said, "When exactly does it switch to the ND navigation display page?" When you reach the step for setting the bleed valve, the system will automatically switch to that page for display. So after checking is done, we manually switch back to the end page, right? You press the bleed valve, and it will auto-switch, right? When it switches to eFlow 1, it will automatically change the page, but the bleed valve will remain and not switch again. So at that point we need to manually switch, correct? Sorry, sir, if I'm asking too many questions. No worries, it's totally fine. Although Captain Liao was not part of the conversation, the fact that the first officer and the captain in the right seat were constantly talking while the aircraft was taxiing is considered prohibited conduct during critical phases of flight. At this time, the cockpit should strictly observe sterile procedures to avoid distractions. Conversations like this could lead the pilot in command, in this case, Captain Liao, to lose focus, which could result in errors. This also somewhat reflects a lack of discipline and weak crew coordination. In the process of implementing standard operating procedures and crew resource management, cockpit CRM, there were serious mistakes and shortcomings. At 10:51, after the previous flight cleared the runway, the air traffic controller issued takeoff clearance for the flight GE235, which was waiting in position. GE235, wind from 100. Runway 10 cleared for takeoff. Roger, cleared for takeoff. The crew confirmed all control indicators. Control stick neutral, rudder aligned. All procedures complete. Pre-takeoff checklist complete, sir. After completing the pre-takeoff check, Captain Liao Chien-tsung pushed the throttle forward. The aircraft began accelerating down the runway. However, immediately after adjusting engine power, Captain Liao Chien-tsung in the right seat noticed the ATPCS system, automatic takeoff power control system, was not switched to ready mode. Hey, ATPCS isn't on. Yeah, it's not on yet. This system is extremely critical on ATR aircraft, ATR-72 models. In case of an engine failure after takeoff, this system automatically adjusts the failed engine's propeller blades to align with the direction of flight. That is, it shifts to the feathered mode to reduce drag. At the same time, it increases the other engine's power by up to 10% more to help the aircraft continue flying on one engine. According to the ATR-72-600 operations manual, the ATPCS, the crew must abort takeoff immediately. Upon detecting the issue, Captain Liao immediately ordered an aborted takeoff. Abort takeoff. However, after hearing and understanding the abort command, Captain Liao still chose to continue accelerating. Forget it, let's just go. Let's keep going. 17 knots. The only reasonable explanation for Captain Liao's decision is that, on the ATR-72-500 model, if ATPCS fails to activate and the aircraft's total weight is still within limits, it is permissible to continue takeoff. But this is not allowed on the -600 variant. Unfortunately, TransAsia's training materials and technical bulletins did not clarify this difference between the two aircraft types. When the aircraft reached a speed of 70 knots, the ATPCS system suddenly returned to normal operation. 17 knots. I'm in control. Oh, now ATPCS is armed. The indicator light turned on, making the crew believe everything was fine, no further worries. But just a few seconds later, the aircraft passed V1 speed, the decision speed. At that point, aborting takeoff is no longer permitted. V1, VR, rotate speed. Rotate. At 10:52, Flight GE235 lifted off the ground. Shortly afterward, the captain activated autopilot mode. After takeoff, the ATR-72-600 followed correct procedures, departing the airport via Muda 2Q SID. To enter the airway, the navigation system was activated. Navigation mode is on. Checked. Autopilot engaged. Autopilot is on. Green light displayed. Checked. At this point, Captain Liao Chien-tsung gave his assessment of the ATPCS system, maybe just adding a bit more throttle. In reality, the reason the system, ATPCS, worked intermittently was due to a loose solder joint inside the control module. for the automatic pitch adjustment of engine number 2. Because of poor contact in the solder, the torque signal received by the system from the engine was interrupted. This led the computer to misinterpret that the engine was still functioning normally, and then suddenly detected a fault, explaining why the ATPCS system unexpectedly came online as the plane was accelerating. When the aircraft reached an altitude of about 1,000 feet, around 300 meters, Songshan Air Traffic Control requested the crew to switch to Taipei approach frequency. GE235 switching to Taipei approach on frequency 119.7. Goodbye. Roger. Switching to 119.7. Goodbye. GE235, goodbye. Just as Captain Liu repeated the instruction, the main warning alarm sounded in the cockpit. Warning indicator, check. Due to the loose solder in the propeller control module, the ATPCS computer determined that engine number 2 had failed and automatically feathered the propeller, setting it to a feathered, wind parallel position, which caused the engine to lose all thrust, even though there was no input from the pilot. As soon as warning code 816 appeared, the crew began executing the engine failure checklist. Captain Liu immediately disengaged autopilot. I'm taking control. You're in control. The ATR 72-600 has a more advanced autopilot and stabilization system than the -500 model, which can help stabilize the aircraft during engine failure, thanks to its auto trim function and yaw damper to reduce directional deviation. However, out of habit from flying the ATR 72-500, Captain Liao instinctively reacted by disengaging autopilot immediately, which unintentionally increased crew workload for the entire flight team and reduced his own ability to control during the emergency. After that, Captain Liao said, I'm pulling back engine number 1 throttle. He pulled back engine number 1 throttle to about 66 degrees, even though the actual faulty engine was number 2, on the right side. At that moment, Captain Liu in the right seat quickly spoke up. Hold on. Cross-check, cross-check. The checklist process was interrupted by a series of navigation and communication tasks. We're below 2,500 feet. Heading is transitioning. Continuing to turn to HDG 95. Roger, heading confirmed. Because Songshan Airport is close to the city center, with complex surrounding terrain, every flight departing from runway 10 must strictly follow air traffic instructions and perform navigation from the very first seconds after takeoff. In the event of engine failure, the crew must follow the engine-out departure procedure instead of continuing the normal route. However, Captain Liu then instructed Captain Liao to adjust the heading, which distracted Liao, causing him to skip the critical step of cross-checking the throttle pullback on engine number 1. After pulling back the throttle of engine number 1 to around 66 degrees, the aircraft only reached an altitude of 1,485 feet, 451 meters, and its speed dropped to just 106 knots. The crew continued to troubleshoot the engine failure, confirming engine number 2 had malfunctioned. Check if thrust increased and propeller feathered automatically. Got it. First, monitor the airspeed. However, because engine number 1 is on the left, was losing power due to the captain's throttle input, the airspeed continued to drop to just 101 knots. In that situation, if Captain Liao had pushed engine number 1 throttle to maximum, the aircraft could still have maintained altitude and safely returned to the airport. However, instead of following proper emergency procedures, the captain took an incomprehensible action, pulling back engine number 1 and confirming engine number 2 had failed. After this contradictory exchange, Captain Liao continued pulling back engine number 1 throttle to around 45 degrees, bringing the engine nearly to idle mode. At this point, Captain Liu, who was performing the engine failure checklist, once again failed to cross-check his colleague's actions. When the aircraft reached its peak altitude of 1,661 feet, 506, it began to fall rapidly. Just seconds later, the control stick in the cockpit shook violently, a clear warning signal that the aircraft was nearing stall. Stall warning with terrain alert. You're too low, add power. At this moment, Captain Liu realized engine number 1 wasn't running at full power. Hold on, check the throttle. Engine number 1 has switched to feathered mode and shut down. Instead of pushing engine number 1 throttle up, Captain Liu advanced the throttle of engine number 2, the engine that had failed, and pulled engine number 1 throttle back again. Even worse, he pulled the propeller control lever of engine number 1 to fuel cutoff position. Fuel cutoff. After this sequence of critical errors, the aircraft lost all thrust from both engines, turning into a powerless glider in midair. Why did Captain Liao make such a series of critical errors? In fact, a 1999 report titled Propulsion System Malfunction and Inappropriate Crew Response warned that most accidents involving pilots shutting down the wrong engine stemmed from failing to properly monitor throttles and engine indicators during the early phase of the malfunction. Failing to properly assess the situation caused the pilot to respond incorrectly, leading to catastrophic consequences. However, if properly trained from the beginning and given regular, structured refresher training, such mistakes could have... Unfortunately, before the crash occurred, Captain Liao had previously received a poor evaluation in engine failure scenario training. Due to a lack of preparation and practical skill, he panicked and made poor decisions. When facing a real emergency, at 10:53, the situation was already out of control, as the aircraft was in an emergency state. Captain Liao Chien-tsung made a radio announcement. Mayday, Mayday, the aircraft has lost an engine. However, due to frequency interference, the controller did not receive the emergency call from Flight GE235. Instead, she assumed the crew had not yet switched to the approach frequency and repeated her instruction. GE235, please continue to contact approach frequency 119.7, over. When hearing that strange response, the crew did not repeat their distress signal. In a state of panic, they tried to reactivate the autopilot. I'm flying again. You're flying? What's going on? Don't pitch up too high. I'm turning on autopilot. Try turning it back on. But in near-stall condition, autopilot could not be activated. Soon after, Captain Liu was horrified to realize there was no thrust remaining. Both engines had failed. It's all gone. Try restarting. When the aircraft was only about 150 meters above the ground, the crew realized both engines had already shut down, and the airplane was now just a metal shell, gliding through the air. Try restarting. Okay, turn it back on. Turn on the power. The propeller control lever of engine number 1 to automatic mode. The high-pressure turbine speed began to rise slightly, but by then, the remaining altitude was only 100 meters. Try restarting. Unable to restart, the ground was rushing toward them. After 7 desperate repetitions of restart, Captain Liao finally realized, oh no, I pulled the wrong throttle. But it was too late. His last words were one more restart. Right after that, the aircraft stalled at low altitude. With no recovery, the left wing collided with a taxi, traveling on the Eastern Ring Boulevard. Just 3 minutes after takeoff, Flight GE235 crashed into the Keelung River. The plane's belly faced down on the water. A devastating accident killed 43 people. Only 15 survived thanks to timely rescue. After the crash, some media outlets, before the investigation even ended, hurriedly praised Captain Liao Chien-tsung as a hero who sacrificed himself to save the passengers. However, the official investigation report from the multinational commission rejected this entirely. The conclusion stated, the crash happened because Captain Liao shut down a fully functioning engine number 1, while the actual faulty engine was number 2. Although this critical error was the direct cause of the crash, it would be wrong to place full blame on the flight crew. In fact, Captain Liao's poor judgment during the emergency aligned precisely with the weaknesses previously identified during training. This showed that TransAsia Airways had major gaps in pilot training and upgrades, proving the airline did not prioritize aviation safety as its top concern. Just 6 months after the crash of Flight GE235, another tragic disaster struck due to violations of standard operating procedures, dragging TransAsia's reputation to rock bottom. By the end of 2016, the company was bankrupt and forced to shut down. 2 years later, the airline, with 65 years of operation, officially declared bankruptcy, marking the end of a turbulent and tragic journey. A harsh and sobering warning to any business willing to sacrifice safety in pursuit of profit.